I have written this story as not only the pilot episode to a potential series I would like to start for my channel, but also as a Remembrance Day special. Though I am fully aware of the fact that, because of other commitments, and also because of the time it may take to create this recording, it may not be uploaded in time for the 11th hour. I still want this story to be a reminder of the fact that in any conflict, it's not just about a matter of whether or not we lose or win against a different side. It's also a matter, when we remember these conflicts, of remembering all those who fell. On both sides, it doesn't matter whose army your country supports or who your country is fighting against. It's just the thought of people suffering from conflicts all over the world. It's something that affects us all in some level. I write this story based on events that I have both experienced myself, in the form of a passenger at Brighton Station making a racist remark to some other passengers as they happened to pass him, but also based on a very unfortunate event in history that I think you may recognise. I should also point out that some of the stories I intend to produce in this series will be funny, some of these will be more tragic, but all will be based on true events, as the Reverend Wilbert Awdry would have preferred. This, considering the severity of the events that are depicted in this story, is both, in my opinion, an ideal way to honour the devastation caused by such a major conflict as war, as well as introducing you to the new premise of this anthology series. Dry rails and good running, everyone, and I hope you enjoy this story, which is both the pilot episode for my new YouTube series, The Engines of the Vicarstown Railway Museum, and a Remembrance Day special, out of respect for all those who have fallen in all wars, be they in the armed forces or mere civilians. Engines of the Vicarstown Railway Museum. Tsubasa. Based on the Railway series by the Reverend Wilbert Awdry, and Thomas and Friends by Britt Allcroft and David Mitten. Diesel clattered over the Vicarstown Bridge. He was excited. The Vicarstown Rail Museum manager had just purchased him and he was on his way to his new home. He honked his horn cheerfully as he passed Pip and Emma on their way to London. The sun shone and the birds sang. But Diesel didn't notice this. He was too busy thinking about his new home. Preserved! At last! Me! I've been preserved! He thought to himself. He clattered into the museum yard. Some of the engines stood outside, on shed. The Vicarstown Rail Museum manager greeted him warmly. "We're glad you're here," he said. "Some of our engines are unable to run anymore, so they can't do the tasks we need done." Diesel looked around him. He could see that most of the engines present in the yard were steam engines. He felt uncertain about this, given his own prejudices towards them, but decided to try and make a good impression. He looked at them. They stood shining in the dying evening light, their paintwork polished and their brass shining like gold. Beside them stood their biographies, all placed on special stands. "I'm happy to help, sir," Diesel replied. "What do I need to do first?" "Well, most of the visitors have gone home for the day, so the engines out here need to be shunted back into the museum. Eagle was supposed to do that after his last passenger train on the exhibition line, but his brakes are jammed. Could you push the other engines inside and then shunt him into our workshops?" "Of course," replied Diesel. He started work straight away. To his surprise, most of the engines out on display were pleasant towards him. Diesel was pleased. After his first visit to Sodor, he had expected them to be hostile towards him. They all introduced themselves to him. There was Neil, one of the old Sodor and mainland engines, Dodger, who was a Claude Hamilton, Kurt, a Prussian P8 tender engine, Clan Callan, or Cally for short, a Scottish-British Rail Standard Class 6, Barry, a Standard Class 2 tender engine, Eponine, a French SNCF 3230B tender engine, Cliff, a US stock tank, Sparrow, a tender engine from the Liverpool and Manchester Railway, Georgia, a large LNWR 2P tank engine, and Tsubasa, a narrow-gauge JGR 150 tank engine, who was placed on a flat truck. "I must say, for such a large museum, there's not many of you," Diesel said as he shunted Sparrow back into the museum. "Ah," she said, "that's because some of us are in the workshops and some of us are still inside." "Yeah," agreed Kurt. "Just today I have been restored. What a pity it is only cosmetic." "Oui, mon ami," sighed Eponine sadly. "C'est trop mal. Do we make steam and move ourselves? Mais no." "I dunno what you're complaining about," retorted Dodger, as Diesel came back for him. "At least we don't have to put up with no trucks no more." "Speak for yourself, Mac," grumbled Cliff. "I'd take Shark out for my exhibition runs. I've never met a ruder brake van in all my days." "Och, then you dinna ken about Donald, Doggy and yon spiteful brake van," Cally exclaimed. "A right wee beastie he was too." Soon, Diesel had shunted nearly everyone into the museum. He smiled as he went about his task. He was beginning to enjoy listening to them talking to each other. He moved onto Tsubasa's line. The little tank engine was staring long and hard into the distance. Small tears seemed to be forming in her eyes. "Whatever's the matter?" Diesel asked. "Tomorrow's Remembrance Day," she replied simply. "Oh." Diesel remained respectfully silent for a moment, then continued as carefully as he could. "Whatever's the matter with that?" "Nothing. Nothing at all." "Then why are you so sad?" Diesel asked. His question was answered when he saw a visitor pass by, took one look at her, read her biography and mutter to himself, "Bloomin' before walking away. Diesel did not understand this until he looked at the initials on the biography. "What do they stand for?" he asked. "Japanese Government Railways," she replied. "It's always the same this time of year. Some visitor obsessed with their own country comes along and insults me. Worse, I'm not even Japanese. I'm British. And some of the people I knew personally were Japanese. I know about the atrocities some soldiers in the Japanese army caused to British and American soldiers, but I just can't believe that some people don't understand that not all of them were like that. Especially after..." Tsubasa broke down into sobs of tears. Diesel gently shunted her into the museum, where the other engines, along with Jim and Innie, were waiting for them. The two mid-Sodor engines were both on static display, but there were plans to build two small exhibition lines, one for them and the other for Tsubasa. since her gauge was 1 foot and 3 inches longer than theirs. Diesel shunted Eagle into the workshops and then headed back into the exhibition hall. Tsubasa was still looking sad and miserable. She knew some of them, Georgia said gently. Those who... well, perhaps I'd better explain. Before she arrived in Japan, she was built at the Vulcan Foundry in Lancashire. So by the time she arrived in Japan, her only spoken language was English. She had heard of another engine like her, a brother, but he had been built and sent there some years before she was. It was not an easy voyage. The wind and rain buffeted her ship. She felt as though it would sink and she along with it any moment. But finally the day came when she arrived into port. When she was lifted by the ship's derricks, she could see the dockside bustling with people. They were all moving this way and that about their work and all speaking a language she did not understand. She was lowered roughly onto the rails, since the derricks were barely able to hold her steady in the high winds that day. By the line side stood a young man, only 20 years old. He smiled warmly at her. "Welcome to Japan," he said in English. "My name is Mr. Kenji Marino. I am the controller of the San-Yo Railway. What is your name?" The little engine was stunned. She hadn't expected him to speak her native language. "But please, sir, I don't have a name," she said. "Indeed," Mr. Marino said. "We cannot allow that." He looked at her all over. "I have seen many engines," he said eventually, "but I have never seen one like you. You have travelled so far, and yet you still have a long journey ahead of you. I feel there is some level of greatness in you. I shall name you Tsubasa. It means wing. Already you have soared through the sky by coming here, and were very brave to leave your homeland, and I feel you will soar some more. It is a long road and will be far from easy, but I promise I shall help you, and I shall see to it that others do so as well." Tsubasa smiled. "Thank you, sir," she said. Mr. Marino was as good as his word. She was introduced to her crew, though they only spoke Japanese. He helped them understand each other by translating for them. The crew cleaned and oiled her and lit her fire. Tsubasa felt much better when steam began to fill her boiler and flow into her pistons. She puffed off to her new sheds. The engines there greeted her warmly. She was surprised when she found that some of them spoke English. "Mr. Marino's father taught us," they explained. "Before he retired, he spoke highly about learning a second language." They chatted long into the night about the many places she would see and the people she would meet on their railway. Tsubasa spent many years working on the line. Every day she worked hard. She never shied away from her work, and whenever she strained, it was because she needed to be sent to the works. She was always repaired, well maintained, and well looked after. Mr. Marino saw to that. He personally came by her sheds every day after work, and gave her lessons in Japanese. Her crews over the years helped with this as well, so that she would understand better what it was she had to do. In return, she gave them all English lessons. Subsequently, by the time they went their separate ways, both engine and crew members had expanded their language skills considerably. She even learned the name of the city where she lived and worked: Hiroshima. The years passed. Tsubasa grew older. Other, younger engines arrived, and older ones left her. Where, she did not know. One thing she did know was that they never came back. By this point, she felt it best just to accept that fact. As World War I went, and first the 20s, then the 30s came in, Tsubasa carried on with her work. She paid little regard to the many social and political changes that took place around her, though she never denied their severity, and proved herself to be responsible, reliable, and really useful. Eventually, World War II began, and following the attack on Pearl Harbor, Japan entered the conflict. Tsubasa couldn't bear it. Troop trains and ammunition vans lined the dockside. All of these she knew were to be used against the country she had been built in. Mr. Marino, her crew, and the other engines were aware of this. They never let these feelings be known to anyone else. It would have been too dangerous for them to do so. But they saw to it that, whenever possible, she never took a train designed with a military use in mind. The years wore on. Each day they received reports of countless atrocities committed by the British and Americans against the Japanese, and rumours began to spread of war crimes committed by Japanese troops against British and American forces. Tsubasa's resolve began to tremble. Now she was fully aware of the suffering on both sides. "That is the terrible thing about conflict," Mr. Marino told her sadly one night. He was by now an old man. In a few months he intended to retire and let his grandson take charge of the railway. "We hit walls on all sides." The day started like any other for Tsubasa. Her crew opened the shed doors and lit her fire, before taking her out on the first run of the day. The air raid sirens had gone off that morning, so she was now running late. This was the second time in the space of 7 hours that they had gone off. The strange thing was that last night several American bombers had flown overhead. This time round there was only the one, an American weather patrol. She knew them to be American because, from what she saw in her shed window, they flew higher than any Japanese aircraft. Patiently she waited. The all-clear was given and her crew appeared. They lit her fire and drove her towards the yard, where she picked up her coaches and made her way to the station on her commuter service. She simmered happily as the passengers boarded her. Though she was a British locomotive, she had been a part of the railway for many years and they never gave her any trouble. The guard blew his whistle and sent her on her way. She puffed off, passing streets full of people with cars, buses and lorries honking as she went past. She whistled to everyone she met. The air was sweet and the sky was clear. As she puffed into the countryside, she could see another plane flying overhead. No one could have expected what happened next. No one had any idea or explanation for it. Certainly, no one was aware of the fact that that day, Monday, the 6th of August, 1945, a day that had started like any other, would be remembered for a very long time. The explosion rocked the landscape just as Tsubasa left the tunnel and proceeded along the river. The noise almost deafened her as a flash of bright light filled her eyes. When her vision cleared, she looked around in fright and saw in horror a large mushroom-shaped cloud raising up into the sky. An overwhelming sense of fear and horror spread through her. Her crew had seen everything and they were scared too. Her driver opened the regulator wide. "Faster, Tsubasa! Faster!" he cried. Tsubasa didn't need telling twice. The coupling between her and the coaches tightened as she charged desperately forwards. She could see the cloud rising higher and higher. It seemed to fill the whole sky. It was heading towards her. She hurtled along the line as fast as her wheels could carry her. Gradually the cloud retreated into the distance, but Tsubasa never stopped, not until she reached the safety of the next station. Her passengers got off, shocked and curious by all that had happened. Soon it was time to leave. Her driver released the brakes and opened her regulator, but Tsubasa didn't budge. What's the matter with you? He demanded. A faraway look had entered Tsubasa's eyes. She fixed her gaze upon him sternly. We have to go back, she demanded. What? That's insane, cried the fireman. Look, just get me back there, she demanded. There are people back there, people who may need our help. Her driver and fireman argued with her, but there was nothing they could do about it. They uncoupled her from the train and reversed her gently back down the line. Lights turned to darkness. Flames flickered all around them. The air became thick with fumes and dust. Frightened, Tsubasa looked all around her. The city she had known and loved, the one place she had called home for so many years, now lay in ruins. Only a few buildings, built to withstand earthquakes, remained. The sheds were one of the many buildings that had been destroyed, the wreckage of some of the other engines plain for all to see. And all in the space of a few seconds. She could see people passing by her. Some were injured, limping by in attempts to seek medical assistance. Some, though they were relatively unhurt, ran towards piles of rubble where others lay crying out for help, trapped by the fallen debris. Others walked slowly past, moaning, their faces and bodies horribly disfigured, before collapsing on the ground by the line side, dead. She stopped by the station building. She had seen something. First a hand, then a head appeared from the wreckage of where the office had once been. The head rose slowly and looked at her. Tsubasa. It was Mr. Marino. With tears in her eyes, Tsubasa blew her whistle long and loud. Some soldiers who had been helping the city folk ran towards her. She told them where Mr. Marino was. A wailing sound could be heard, and soon an ambulance arrived. Acting quickly, the soldiers recovered Mr. Marino from the ruins of his office, and he was taken away in the ambulance. That was the last time Tsubasa ever saw him. The days seemed to follow in a haze for Tsubasa. She did what she could to help clear the wreckage, taking coaches filled with passengers who had been injured as part of an ambulance train to nearby hospitals. The severity of these wounds alarmed her. Some passengers suffered burns where their clothes had been seared into their skins. Others suffered either direct burns to their bodies from the light and intense heat of the blast, or the decay of their bodies as their flesh began to melt, their hair fell out, and they began bleeding uncontrollably. Still more suffered from physical deformities. One man even seemed to have had both his eyes completely sealed shut from the intense heat, and a woman lost the ability in her body to nurse her child as her muscles began to fail her. Tsubasa also took trucks full of rubble and dead bodies to be either disposed of or buried in graves. The sight of this last load haunted her dreams for many years. Men, women, and children of all ages, all cut down with years of life still left in them, now lay in the trucks, rotting away before her very eyes. But the torture didn't stop there. Some days later, she saw 2 American soldiers by the Aoi Bridge next to the Kempeitai, a military and secret police headquarters, being stoned to death, their cries echoing shrilly through the air, while crowds of angry civilians surrounded them, shouting abuse at them. She could understand why. Their side had been responsible for this destruction, just as Japan's Air Force was responsible for the attack on Pearl Harbor. But, for all she knew, they may not have been the ones responsible for this carnage. Yet, she reflected, who was to say that anyone in Hiroshima was responsible for any kind of destruction to England or America? Her eyes widened as she began to realize the full extent of Mr. Marino's words. We hit walls on all sides. Still, Tsubasa carried on with her work. She gently and respectfully escorted the corpses away and quickly and safely delivered her passengers to medics. But as time wore on, she became worn out and run down. She found it difficult to steam properly, and her controls became stiffer and stiffer. It was clear how tired she was. When the cleanup operation was completed and Japan had surrendered, another, younger man came to see her. He introduced himself as Rin Marino, Mr. Marino's grandson. "Grandfather often told me about you," he said. "You practically became his pride and joy. So it is with great regret that I must inform you that he passed away in hospital the day after you rescued him." Tsubasa broke down into uncontrollable tears. Mr. Marino's grandson looked at her sympathetically and continued. "Grandfather wanted me to tell you how very grateful he was that you came to his rescue. I have heard also about your excellent work these last few trying days. Unfortunately, there is no money left to repay you. I have, however, managed to sell you to a gentleman on the island of Sodor. He is interested in starting a museum for railway engines and has already collected 3 others, as well as several pieces of rolling stock. I have told him all about you, and he has agreed to buy you. You meant so much to my grandfather, and after everything you have done for us, I cannot bear to have you scrapped." "Thank you, sir," Tsubasa said quietly. Mr. Marino's grandson turned and walked thoughtfully away for a few paces. Then he stopped and looked at her. "Grandfather told me he felt you would do great things," he said. "And he was right. We are all in your debt, Tsubasa. Never forget that." With that, he disappeared into the darkness. Tsubasa sat, cold and alone, thinking on all that had happened to her. "So that's what happened," finished Georgia. "When the port was repaired, she was loaded onto a ship and taken here." "It's disgusting," added Barry, "how people act as if their side was in the right during any conflict without acknowledging how much suffering goes on the other side." "Indeed," agreed Diesel. Then he paused. "I was wondering," he asked, "what about the rest of you? How did you all arrive here?" "Ugh, we'll tell ye some other time," yawned Neil. "'Tis too late now." But as the other engines fell asleep, Diesel noticed Tsubasa still staring up into the night sky. "I've lost others too," he said. "People and fellow diesel engines. But you know, when I look up at the night sky, I get the feeling that they're still out there, looking out for us." "Their memory lives on in us," agreed Tsubasa. Both engines sat silently for a very long time. They reflected on all that had been said. What is most damning about any conflict is not only the prospect of defeat, but also the fact that we become so biased, so caught up in our version of events, that we deny the suffering others experience. Remembrance Day is not just a day where we celebrate victory in any conflict, but it is more importantly where we remember all those who fell, be they in the armed forces or civilians. For in death, we are all equal as we are in life. Lest we forget.